Hi, so everyone, welcome to the webinar launch of All Our Trees. So my name is Sarah Nerton from City of Trees, and I'm hosting today's session with my colleagues Sarah Williams and Brian Cosgrove. There are some known faces, which is great, but for those who are new, City of Trees is a charity passionate about planting trees, transforming unloved woodland and connecting people to nature, as well as our tree planting projects across Greater Manchester, which are all part of the Northern Forest. We have our Citizen Forester volunteer programme, and we also work with schools, create community orchards, plant street trees and do nature-based activities. As well as practical projects on the ground, we also want to influence policy and ensure greater protection for our existing trees and woodlands and enable the planting of more. This is where All Our Trees comes in. So in the summer of 2018, we undertook the biggest iTree Eco survey outside the United States with the aim of quantifying Greater Manchester's trees and woods. From this, we know that there are over 11.3 million trees across the city region, and we also know what they do and what value that they have. That's from producing oxygen to locking up carbon. These headline results will be outlined later today and form part of section 2 of the All Our Trees strategy. The aim of All Our Trees was to be the Tree and Woodland Strategy for Greater Manchester, a collective document which brings together the data mentioned above, making the case for trees, and extensive mapping as to where to plant more trees for the most benefit, which Brian will be talking about more in his presentation. The strategy also brings together guidance and standards from across the sector, which is really, really extensive. All Our Trees has been endorsed by the GMCA, and the strategy is for you to read, absorb and use in your day-to-day practice. We're here to help you and are keen for you to adopt the principles and practices in this document. So please get in touch if you have any further questions and comments. Okay. The first thing we're going to show you is a welcome from Councillor Andrew Weston, who can't be here today. So hopefully we can have a little bit of an introduction from him. Okay, just make sure we have audio. We're sharing computer sound.
All Our Trees today. I'm sorry that I can't be with you on the call this morning. Unfortunately, the coronavirus crisis here in Trafford means that I'm needed elsewhere, but I hope you find the session really useful and informative. I'm Councillor Andrew Weston, the leader of Trafford Council and also the Green City Region portfolio holder for Greater Manchester. This means, alongside the GMCA's environment team, we facilitate action and support progress towards the 5-year environment plan for the city region. Launched in March 2019, the plan sets out our long-term environmental vision to be carbon neutral by 2038. It also documents the urgent actions we all need to take over the next 5 years to help us achieve this. The natural environment is a crucial part of this plan. We need to protect, maintain and enhance our key natural assets and the multiple benefits they provide. We are lucky here in Greater Manchester. We have some wonderful natural landscapes, from wetlands to watercourses, from peat bogs to parks. But the value of our trees and woodlands is striking. They are doing amazing things for us, absorbing huge amounts of pollutants and helping us to soak up the carbon emissions that we need to cut radically in the next few years. Not only will they help us to address the carbon emergency, however, they'll also play a part in creating a healthy and happy city region for both people and wildlife. They are placemakers, creating attractive environments where people want to visit, live, work and invest. Yet in order to protect our existing woodlands and to plant more trees, we need a strategy. and that's where All Our Trees comes in. It sets out clear objectives on how we can protect and increase the benefits of this natural asset. The strategy also makes the case for trees and woods through a wealth of evidence and goes on to bring together guidance and standards from across the sector. At the heart of this approach is that nature really matters. It forms an essential part of a future-facing, dynamic and vibrant Greater Manchester. Produced by City of Trees on behalf of the Greater Manchester Forests Partnership, this document is endorsed by the GMCA, and we hope it will collectively guide us to get more from all our trees. We all have a role to play, not just landowners and local authorities, but businesses, schools, developers and social landlords too. We need to plant more trees, especially larger, long-lived species, and to ensure both existing and new trees are protected and managed to get the most from them for generations to come. I urge you all to absorb this document and embed it into your policies, strategies, plans and practices. City of Trees are on hand to help, giving guidance, support and advice on how we can all boost the benefits of our existing trees and grow our urban forests of the future. Let's all work together for a greener Greater Manchester, where all our trees are celebrated and championed. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the session.
Okay, so hopefully that film, for all of you who the strategy is new to, gives you a bit of an overview of what it is, why we've done it and what it includes. So that was the aim of that, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what it is. So we're now going to hand over to Brian, who's hand over to Brian, who's going to do his presentation, which is a little bit more detail around the mapping behind the strategy and how you can use it in a more dynamic way rather than just looking at the sort of PDF document. Do remember to post your questions in the Q&A function below, and we're going to pick those up. And Brian is the author of the document, so he is a really good person to ask any questions to. So please do use this opportunity to kind of outline everything. So Brian, I'm going to hand over to you.
Sure, although I would say that it's the lead author maybe, but not the sole author. This was a real collective effort. So some of you on the webinar in the room will have already seen a version of this presentation when I've given it before to explain what the opportunity mapping is all about. And I'm afraid to say that we've pre-recorded this one to circumvent any IT issues or to reduce the likelihood. So it's maybe not as lively as some of the other presentations I may have given in the past, but I challenge anyone to talk to an answering machine for 10 minutes and keep it interesting. But I've done my best anyway. But there's no nice sound bed to this one as well, I'm sorry to say. But hopefully this just gives a little bit more detail. I really wanted people to understand what the opportunity mapping was all about. There's an awful lot of opportunity mapping out there for different outcomes, and I just wanted people to understand how we'd approach this, to understand what it was that this mapping was really all about. So let me see if I can get this to work. How's this? Is this working?
Yeah.
Great.
While the first sections of the strategy are concerned with building on what we already know about Greater Manchester's urban forest, quantifying the value of our trees and woodlands, and making the case for their protection, their expansion and their replacement, this section is concerned with the question, if trees can deliver all these benefits, where should we be planting the next 3 million and beyond to deliver the greatest benefits for people and to help improve the long-term health and resilience of our neighbourhoods? So we'd like to take some time to explain our approach to answering this question and outline some of the ways the results can be accessed and utilised. To begin, we needed to define the benefits or ecosystem services, and I'm sorry if I use these terms interchangeably, there's evidence that trees can deliver. And we wanted to make sure that our scope was in line with work being undertaken by the Combined Authority on other elements of our green infrastructure. Following on, the simplest approach would have been to take datasets that describe spatially where the need for these services is greatest, or where we've got problems, and overlay these on top of each other to produce a map of hotspots of issue, of problem. However, a map that simply shows whole neighbourhoods as areas of need isn't very helpful in designing projects, and we wanted to be able to pinpoint exactly where trees were going to be beneficial, but where we could realistically get spades into the ground as well. So taking Ordnance Survey's detailed master map as the baseline, we first wanted to produce a map of land that we might consider to be capable of being planted, a plantability map. And using information built into master map, and also by bringing in other local data sets, such as designations and other land use, we were able to screen out parcels of land that would not beneficially be capable of holding trees. This results in a detailed map of what we call notionally plantable. So that's land that is capable of having trees planted on it, although there might not necessarily be permission to do so. There's been no consultation with landowners in this case. This is just about what is physically, technically plantable. Something to say about this is that not all of these parcels are already green space. And this map also includes car parks, public squares and pavements where they're wide enough, because we want to highlight the importance of greening hard landscapes. The next step was to find easily accessible available data sets that describe where the problems were greatest, so where this need was, and where trees might play a role in alleviating these issues. And then intersecting those layers with our plantability map to highlight where trees might most usefully be planted in each case. And I should say at this point that the rationale and evidence to support the choice of these data sets is presented in the strategy, and a detailed methodology is available on request. So just taking some of these data sets in turn then, we have here the DEFRA air quality map. So this map is showing areas of the highest modelled concentration of PM2.5s around Greater Manchester. Now these are the very fine particulates, most commonly associated with transport emissions, that are known to cause respiratory issues, particularly for young people. And this is a close-up of one of those areas of concentration, with the plantable parcels highlighted in green. So what we've essentially done here is to score parcels if they appear to offer an opportunity, so if they intersect with one of these areas of need. In some cases, as here, a slightly higher score is given to parcels where trees are going to be of particular benefit or importance. So in this case, the very dark green parcels are those surrounding a primary school, where we think it's particularly important to use trees designed well to help screen residents, school children from particulate emissions. The next map here is a map of modelled surface temperature, a piece of work that was produced by the University of Manchester. And what we did here was to pick out those areas that are likely to receive the very highest temperatures by 2050 and overlay that with our plantable parcels to show those areas where we could realistically plant trees to help reduce daytime temperatures, increase comfort, increase safety, and potentially reduce demand for energy for cooling systems. The next map is showing those parcels that could be of particular importance for helping to create nature recovery networks or stepping stones. So these being the plantable parcels that are the very farthest away from any existing woodland or trees. Looking at water quality and flood management, these are plantable parcels that map against the Environment Agency's own map of potential for beneficial riparian planting. And here we've given a higher score to those parcels directly upstream of communities identified as at risk from flooding. And here we've got the same for wider catchment planting. So behind the maps, we basically have a big table of numbers with every parcel or landscape feature represented as a row and scored in the columns for its potential to deliver a specific benefit if trees were planted there. When all of these scores are summed together, it allows us to rank each parcel according to how many benefits might be gained by planting at that location. So we've called that rank priority because we think high scoring places are those where we should be thinking about first, but we might also have called it impact or most benefit, maximum benefit. Viewed at landscape scale, you can see a few large areas really stand out, but there are many, many smaller areas where trees could deliver several benefits and improve the resilience of our towns and our city region. While these maps are each presented in the All Our Trees strategy document, they are probably least useful viewed as static images and need to be viewed dynamically. So to allow everyone to fully explore these maps, we've uploaded them to Mapping GM, where they sit under the Environment and Ecology section. So the maps can be viewed at the landscape scale, to search for priority sites or areas of maximum benefit, or each individual ecosystem benefit can be selected from the drop-down menu and examined individually. So looking again at PM2.5 opportunities or urban cooling, and so on. Once an area of interest is found, or if a user has a particular interest in a location, whether that's a property that they own or that they're working on as a developer, then that site can be zoomed in and the opportunities, either combined or specific, can be examined at that scale. And this could either be used to show the general importance that that site may have for tackling issues in the area, or just we're looking for sites to tackle a specific issue. So we've got the particulates opportunity mapping there. We've also got our stepping stones for nature, as well as the potential that sites in this location might have for enhancing active travel routes. If users have the capability and a license to make use of Ordnance Survey data, then this data is most usefully interrogated in a GIS. This allows you to examine specific geographies and assess the scale and priority of opportunities that might exist, whether that be local authority district, ward level, or within specific property boundaries, such as with social housing providers. It also allows you to search for very exact parameters, so searching for parcels of a particular size or of above a particular benefit threshold, and quantify the amount of land that might be available for tree planting to tackle those issues. In a GIS as well, these data sets can also be combined with other data, third-party data sets, to look for areas of joint interest or joint priorities, such as planned investment locations, or planned habitat creation in the case of other government agencies, to see where joint projects could be established. So this data can be shared with partners on request, or City of Trees can help undertake any detailed analysis. So we've designed this work, these maps, to be as useful to as many people as possible, the widest range of audiences as possible. Certainly we think that in the case of planning and development, this is going to be really useful for helping to look at the importance of existing sites that are planned for development, or maybe help identify potential sink sites, thinking of net gain. And also to ensure that in areas where trees could serve a real function, to make sure that trees are incorporated into any development proposal there. We also think this is useful for landowners, whether that's private landowners or local authorities, for helping put together cases for funding, to help tell the story, to help demonstrate the different benefits that could be gained from trees being planted at that location. So I hope that's explained something about how we've created these maps, and we'll be able to take questions later on.
Yeah, how's that? Does that all worked okay?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, great, Brian.
So now we're going to go to the Q&A session. So just a reminder to post any questions you may have in the Q&A function rather than in the chat, just so we can make sure we see them all, because there's a lot happening in the chat. And then we'll also be able to download the script for these questions and answers, and we can send them out afterwards so you can kind of digest them a bit more. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, who's going to host the Q&A session. So please keep posting your questions. We're going to type the answers, and then we're also going to read them out, and Brian's going to answer them.
Great, thanks very much, Sarah. So yeah, just going down in order really from the questions and answers. So yes, like Sarah said, if you have put questions in the chat box, please just redrop them in here so we can ensure that we pick them all up. So Brian, firstly, from Amanda Bamford, did you rank the benefits in your scoring?
So we thought about doing this, but after consulting with a few different groups, it was decided that everyone would have such different opinions on which of those benefits were more important or less important than others, that we just decided to just give everything a flat score. So no, there's no ranking in the benefits at all. We didn't prioritize those. However, that there's a bias in the way, or in the inclusion of the benefits, or the needs data sets that we were looking at, in that we were really focusing on, not exclusively, but we were really trying to focus on the needs for people.
Super, thank you. There was just a note there from Tim Cosford, if we can please share the link with the tree plantability mapping, etc. So I think you're going to be doing that afterwards, aren't you, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all the links to both the videos, GM mapping, and to download the All Our Trees document will be shared afterwards as well. So, yeah.
Super. A question from Ian Bowler. So Wigan Council have a target to plant 1 million trees in the next 10 years, which is fantastic. Do the maps include separate figures for the Wigan area?
So the maps can be examined or interrogated at any spatial scale, ward, district. But really, what they are is they're just the basis for they just present the place where we might start looking for opportunities to plant trees to get the most out of them. They don't exclude anywhere. They just show where we'd get the best bang for our buck. But the short answer is yes. So they can be broken down to anywhere and shown at any scale what priorities may exist.
Super, brilliant. A good detailed question here from Amy Phillips. So again, thank you for your presentation. Can you speak a bit more about your inclusion of social rather than ecological demand for trees in your demand mapping? I'm also wondering if you have ever surveyed the public to ask what kind of green infrastructure they'd like to see in their neighbourhoods. If not, is this something you'd consider including in your programme to help you determine where to plant and what to prioritise in terms of planting?
Right, so on the first part, we've included a number of well-being and placemaking type benefits in there. So we looked at indices of multiple deprivation to see where people's life chances were lowest. We looked at where there was ecological inequity, so where there was the least amount of existing green infrastructure or the least tree cover, and we tried to make a priority of highlighting opportunities in those areas. We also we would argue that it's not simply that having trees is good for well-being in a neighbourhood, which we do believe it is, but also the act of planting them, because we anticipate that a lot of the trees that need to go in Greater Manchester are going to be, and it's better this way, that they're planted by the community and also looked after by the community where that's possible. And so we hope that the community are going to be engaged in that, and that there's a well-being and physical health benefit for that. And I can no longer see the second part of the question now, but I think it was about engagement on specific GI. So for this exercise, this is really, this is a landscape scale assessment. And so we haven't gone into individual communities. In tandem to this piece of work, there's a project going on in Greater Manchester called Ignition, and that's a big chunk of that program there, is to survey people in communities to find out what they perceive green infrastructure to be and what kind of green infrastructure they want. So we will certainly, we can certainly use the outputs from that piece of work, but that's really the next level down. That's about, when we're going into a particular location, if our mapping tells us that it's a priority to plant trees there, or that we should be looking there, then we can start to look at, we can engage with the community at that level. So we would, any planting scheme is necessarily going to have to involve local engagement and ground truthing to see what the conditions are on the ground.
Super. I was a bit eager there, Brian, and moved the question into the answered session, so they're still there, just a bit hidden. Okay, so 2 questions here from Mark Ashdown. What is the cost of this modelling, and can the model framework be transferred to other urban areas?
Okay, so the cost, I don't actually know. This has been a big piece of work. The production of this strategy, it's involved many organisations and contributions from a number of partners. And it's been going on for the last 2 years, I would say, because the other big piece of this work has been about the gathering the evidence on the value of our trees. So a big survey of our trees and woodlands. So this section of the opportunity mapping, I wouldn't have a figure for it. Is it transferable? Yes, it is. The methodology is produced. It's something that that we're happy to share, and it should be transferable because it all uses publicly available data, pretty much.
Brilliant. And our colleague Jess Thompson, Director of City Trees, has just put in the chat box, which is helpful. It was approximately 250k for the whole project. So thanks very much, Jess. Okie doke. So a question here from Carmel Campbell. I'm interested to know, what are you doing in and around the airport?
Well, I'm not aware that we have any projects in and around the airport. I can't answer that one. It may be that Manchester City Council have got projects that they're undertaking there.
Super. Okay. Question back for Manchester City Council at some point. And as part of the Northern Forest project, again, this is like our halo area. We'll be looking at that and all the other areas outside of Greater Manchester as well, as part of the Northern Forest. Jess has contributed there as well. Okay, question from Debbie Wallace. Are the GIS players available to use, e.g. shape files?
So the GIS data is shareable with partners, and provided they've got the capability to use or the license to use Ordnance Survey data. So we can share that. But if you get in touch with us after this event, we can discuss that.
Super, thanks, Brian. And Marcus Chilton-Jones. Oh, hang on, where's that question gone? My screen keeps jumping up.
Is this about the species? I can see that.
Yeah, okay, so
Okay.
Are you targeting any specific species of tree for Greater Manchester, or indeed specific species relative to different boroughs, microclimates or existing habitats?
So so this mapping work doesn't really go into species selection. This is just talking about where we might plant trees, but we are working separately. We're working with researchers from the University of Salford who are looking at appropriate tree species selection for climate change. But in the main, really, what we advocate is, as Councillor Weston stated earlier on, we're advocating for increased numbers of large stature, large leaf species in the mix. We're advocating for a wide variety of tree species to make sure that we've got resilience in the face of any novel disease or pests. We would advocate in more natural areas. We would advocate for native tree species where possible, but then in the urban environments, we also, we're aware that there are certain non-native trees that are actually going to do better in those difficult conditions. So really, it all comes down to the specifics of whatever the scheme is, and we take advice from experts there where we can.
Super. A question here from Stephen Hellier. Will all ward councillors across Greater Manchester be made aware of this strategy?
Yes, I do hope so. Yeah.
Sarah.
Yeah, so I guess I can jump in here. So obviously today's launch is the first of kind of a bit of a plan to get this out to everybody, and all the councillors were invited, and we are going to be following up with all of them, sending them a recording of this and a link to the document to download. And then we do have a limited number of print copies, which we will be sending out to people as well, but a very limited number. So yes, we are planning to definitely make all the councillors aware of this.
And yeah, if you can help and share this as well within your own district, then that would be fantastic too. Okie doke. From Councillor Alan Quinn, how many of our 11.3 million trees do you think are at risk of disease?
Well, we don't really know. We don't fully understand, because we don't know what might be on the horizon, or exactly how hard we might be hit by some of the diseases that are there. When we were doing the when we did the initial iTree survey and looked at the health condition of our trees there, and when we looked at just the diseases that we knew were on their way, so horse chestnut bleeding canker and ash dieback, we considered that there were probably in the region of 1 million trees that were at direct risk there. But we don't know for certain that we'll lose all of those million. And I know there's been a report just recently that suggests that in some areas the impact of ash dieback hasn't been as great as it might have been. That said, most of our trees are urban, and we know that trees in more natural settings tend to be a bit more resilient than trees in urban settings where they face a lot of challenging conditions. So we still think that the ash dieback is going to be a significant issue. We just don't know quite how many, but between the ash and the horse chestnut, we have about 1 million trees there that are potentially at risk.
Super, thanks, Brian. Oh, I just actually got rid of one here. Sorry, from scrolling down, from Mike Bradburn. Are the maps interactive and layers turned on and off, or are they just PDFs?
Yeah, so on Mapping GM, that's the beauty of being able to host on that platform. We can zoom into any scale, zoom out, and switch all of those individual benefits layers on and off.
Okey-doke. And from Paris Hayes, this is again on maps. On the maps, one area of Bolton had a high amount of trees, but also a high amount of pollution. Why is this, and what should we do about it?
So while trees, in the main, trees are very good at being able to scrub out particulates on their leaf surfaces. When we're thinking about transport emissions, well, pollution from transport emissions, the key there to try to shield people from those pollutants is to plant trees such that they screen or they disperse polluted air to break that pathway between the source and the receptor. So when it comes to looking at air pollution, the way we plant trees is critical, and there's a lot of work emerging about this from Birmingham University right now that we're paying close attention to. But the trees could only ever be part of a strategy there. Really, to reduce that air pollution, we need to look at modal shift as Transport for Greater Manchester are doing. But we want them to make sure, we want them to consider trees as part of that solution.
Super, thank you. From Erica East here, really exciting work, thank you. Have public health agencies, NHS trusts shown any interests? For example, opportunities for social prescribing, access to green space?
They have, although I think our director would be better placed to answer this one.
Yeah.
But we have a programme, Citizen Forester, which is our community involvement programme, and that's exactly what that's about. That's about getting people out and active and involved in their trees and woodlands.
Yeah, and we are working really closely with Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership on looking at some green prescription type work and working with them and a number of partners at the moment, and there'll be more information on that, you know, in the future. Great, okay, so question again from Carmel Campbell. Have you conducted this for any other areas in the UK? What are the timescales and costs for this? Is this something that the local authority are funding?
Well, no, City of Trees remit really is Greater Manchester, the Greater Manchester area. So we're not doing any work outside this area right now. But a lot of work is going on nationally, looking at impact of trees and what our tree cover is. And I know that Kieran Doik from Forest Research is on this webinar right now. And if you're interested to see what is going on, I would go over to Forest Research website and have a look there at some of the tree canopy work that's being undertaken.
Super, thank you. Tim Cosford asks, has any partnership work been done with the Woodland Trust to attempt coordinated tree strategy approaches, which for instance may be headline messages in lobbying Parliament for a greener environment, including the value of trees?
In short, yes. We mentioned earlier that this piece of work was done on behalf of the GM Forest Partnership, which is a partnership of representatives from each of the local authorities in Greater Manchester and the Woodland Trust and Natural England and the Forestry Commission. So we do work quite closely with the Woodland Trust, but we're not, although we have an interest in influencing policy locally, we're not a lobbying organisation, and that's something that the Woodland Trust are a better place to do, but we do work very closely with them.
And we've got the Northern Forest, which is a partnership which ourselves and the Woodland Trust are part of. Thank you, Brian. Next question is from Brit sorry if I said this wrong, Abil Trupp. Who did the maps consult for Manchester Municipality? So from Denmark, which is brilliant, welcome. So your knowledge is obviously external, so yeah, I want to know about the map consultants.
Sorry, I'm not really sure how to answer this one. So we're an independent charity. We've done this work on behalf of a partnership of 10 local authorities and a combined authority for Greater Manchester. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure how else to answer that. Sorry about that.
Any further questions, then do follow up with us afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
Again from Mark Ashdown, we use QGIS for modelling GIS data. Can this platform be used with this framework?
Yes, it can.
Super. And from Johnny Sadler, hi Johnny. Was it possible to do a high-level analysis of GM-wide tree planting costs and financial benefits?
Yes, it is, because what we can do is we can look at the different types of planting. So this can be separated out as well. to show it as either green space planting or hard landscape planting, and we can come up with some generic planting costs depending on the types of woodlands that we might expect to see on those types of land parcels, as well as looking at things like carbon benefits. So we can do some quantification, yeah.
Great, thank you. And from Gary, as stated in your presentation, many of existing woodlands suffer from neglect or lack of proactive management, very true, and provide poor ecosystem services. Will this strategy address this issue?
So we absolutely hope so, because that's one of the key strands of our strategy is that, as well as planting new trees, we want to bring the 2,000 hectares of woodland we already have back into active management. And we see the community as having a role in that as well, and that's exactly what we were doing. That, you know, the big drive of gathering all of this evidence was to demonstrate the value of the woodlands that we've already got to the economy and to the people of Greater Manchester. So yeah, we certainly hope so.
Super, thank you. A question from Catherine Thompson. Wondering if there is a plan to encourage or ensure local authorities, developers and planners implement these suggestions when planning development work?
So as I said, the Jane Forest Partnership is a partnership of the district authorities, and through that we are very much hoping that this will act as a framework for local plan production or production of local tree and woodland strategies, that will be able to use these priorities as a template, but then add local priorities into that to guide development work in the districts. Did that make? I hope that made sense. That sounded like Yoda.
Also, just to add to that, you know, I think Councillor Weston kind of touched on this. This is a collective strategy. Obviously, you know, City of Trees, we've produced this with a huge number of partners and pulled it together. But then we kind of looking for people to adopt it into their plans and practices, and very much take ownership of it as well. So it's really important that people, you know, look at this document, read it, absorb it, and see how their local plans and strategies can fit into it. So we all have a responsibility. As we say, these are all our trees, so it's not for kind of us to say people have to do this, but we're really encouraging people to do that, and the wealth of information and the evidence base, crucially as well, is contained in this document. So we've kind of given you all this information. We really hope people will kind of adopt it. So it's really is a collective strategy for Greater Manchester.
Super, thanks Sarah. Again, a question from Mark Ashdown again. How do you plan to protect and retain existing trees so that net gain does not undermine new planting ambitions?
Hopefully by demonstrating the real importance of those trees to the economy and the people of Greater Manchester. That's really the fundament of this piece of work, to give people quantified benefits that they can use then in to help make that case.
Super, thank you. And then Mark's also posted a link to some of the work in Bristol, so do take a look at that as well. Okay, a question from Sheila Bailey. Stockport Council has just submitted 12 areas suitable for woodland planting to the GM Forest Partnership funding bid. Brilliant, thank you. Our climate change strategy proposes planting 11,500 trees, and we are planting 2,200 highways trees. Is this work included in the mapping, or is it additional? Good question.
So having not seen how those sites were chosen, I'm not sure how they appear on the maps, but those sites will certainly be on the maps. The driver for that work really was looking at carbon benefits, and we can trees will absorb carbon irrespective of where you plant them, provided they're going to be able to grow well. What this mapping is doing is about showing the additional benefits that could be gained from planting at those locations, to really demonstrate value for money, particularly when that's public money that's being used to plant those trees. So it isn't additional, but this mapping, I'm not sure if this was used to select those sites. And that is something that we've offered to do for other local authorities, and we have done for other local authorities, so that people can have the confidence that the sites that are being put forward for tree planting are those that are really going to be the highest impact locations that they could be.
Super, thanks very much, Brian. A question here. So before we carry on, we have got just 13 or so questions left. We are going to carry on and run over a little bit to help cover all these. So hopefully you can stay on. And obviously this will be shared around with you if you have to leave bang on midday. So a question from, again, Carmel Campbell. I was very happy to see the particulates reference to schools. I have already expressed an interest in having a tree survey for local schools and churches in Eccles, and a survey was planned for this summer. Is this model being used when people approach you? Also, is there a plan in place to ensure the surveys can go ahead in the summer amidst COVID restrictions to ensure we don't miss out on planting later in the year?
So that's one, I think that's going to be one for our delivery team to answer there. So I'm not sure that there are any surveys going on over the summer. I'm not sure if I can answer that one. Perhaps, Carmel, if you get in touch with us after this session, I can put you in touch with somebody who might be able to answer that.
Super, thanks, Brian. Okie doke, question from Lawrence Edwards, echoing question already. Okay, do you think it would be beneficial to combine the tree opportunity data with a public consultation? So is this being covered already, or is this any additional information to add?
I mean, it is sort of a repetition, but I believe it would. So I mean, if we're looking at when we're developing local proposals, then I think absolutely it would, to help show the benefit. I do think it would. Also, I think it's useful to when we combine it with other data sets that demonstrate local priorities, so that we can either screen out sites where there's a conflict of demand on that space, or whether that particular whether that particular piece of land is more useful for a different habitat creation scheme, perhaps. So really, it comes into its own at the local scale when it's combined with local priorities.
Great, thank you. Question from Lee Dudley. Do you have good data on single urban tree carbon capture that supports your GI mapping? And if so, could you share? Oh, it's just gone. Could you share? It would be great to see any data. Nice work, by the way. Thank you, Lee.
And I think that Kieran's actually answered that.
Oh, has he? Oh, yeah, look at that. Thank you, Kieran. Super. Carmel, a question from Carmel here. Okay, make sure you post this on LinkedIn. That's a good one. Yeah, it's a good note. Thank you. Ralph Bolton, this is excellent work. Oh, there's another question here from Dave as well. This is excellent work. Congrats for getting to this stage, but the missing link is real commitment from Manchester City Council, both to protect our existing trees and get on with planting areas with quality new trees as soon as possible. Where are we on this journey to the 11.3 million trees, and how can we track this as members of the public? So 11.3 million trees are the trees we've already got, aren't they? And obviously we're keen to plant more. And Dave Barlow, our colleague at Manchester City Council, has responded there with it has its own tree and woodland action plan and has adopted its own tree specific principles, all accessed via the council website. So thanks for answering that, Dave. Is there anything else you need to add to that, Brian, or is that covers it?
No, I think that's that. And in terms of, well, I mean, just about monitoring of this strategy, we already collect information from a range of different partners, because we are a movement of partners. And so figures on numbers of trees planted, we gather those in, and we'll be reporting those to the GM Combined Authority on a regular basis.
Great. Okay, and two questions here from Councillor Alan Quinn. You've mentioned foreign species, for example, to soak up more carbon. Can you give examples? And what's your opinion of the humble sycamore? It seems to grow anywhere and not to be at risk from disease.
So I'm not sure I mean, the thing about exotic species was just that they might be more tolerant in certain tough conditions, like hard landscaped town centres. So examples of species, Trees and Design Action Group have actually produced a piece of work there that talks about potentially good species to select for hard landscape planting in the future, taking account of climate change. So I would have to direct you to that document. In terms of the humble sycamore, it's looking good. It's not strictly native, but it's a large stature, large leaf species that so far has has been quite resistant, and so we might expect to see more of those in the mix in future.
And just to add to that as well, so the last section of the All Our Trees document, when you get a chance to download it, that section is all about guidance and standards across the sector. So it's got a huge amount of information in there in terms of species selection, all those kind of things. And it also references people like TDAG and, you know, trees in hard landscapes. It's got even technical drawings in. So that really is a wealth of information. So we would kind of want to signpost you to that as well and say, read those guidance and standards, look at the references. That should host all that information, and it's a really useful sort of one-stop shop for guidance and standards for both management of existing trees and woods and also new planting. So make sure you kind of really look at that document and the guidance and standards section that we've kind of pulled together for that reason.
Super, and that's going to be on a link on our website, isn't it, later on? Super. Another question I missed from Councillor Alan Quinn about the map shows the worst areas of pollution around motorways. Do we work with Highways England to plant trees on the verges?
Not a great deal, but we have been doing some work with Highways England just recently. I imagine we could do more.
Yeah, we will be, and you know, we are already in conversation with Highways England as well, so that's really positive. Okay, another question from Tim Cosford. Are there any particularly obvious threats to existing trees and woodlands in Greater Manchester? For example, old mature trees which have already been ecosystems as a result of planned infrastructure developments such as road building or HS2 route construction. So are there any more risks to our existing trees and woodlands?
I mean, there's a great many risks and threats to them, and neglect and development being two there. And these are all picked out in the strategy document, and we present those as in order to highlight the risk that they face and show how important it is that they are protected.
Yeah. Super. A question from Martin Purcell. How are you engaging with farmers and private landowners on this strategy?
So, I mean, we're only launching the strategy now. It's taken us this long to complete it. So we will begin to engage with landowners, with private landowners. So far, we have engaged with some partner landowners, such as United Utilities, and we've used this mapping to look at specific opportunities on their land holdings. So that's just something that we're going to be moving on with going forward.
Super. Thank you. Question from Marcel Ridgerd from AFL Architects. Hi, Marcel. Brian, picking up on your earlier point, what is the optimum distance from a focus point that the tree will benefit local carbon reduction, i.e. the trees do not need to be at the roadside to sink carbon?
So the point was actually about particulate pollution when it came to the specific location of the trees. But in any event, for that question, I would have to refer you to Trees and Design Action Group's first steps for air quality, and also to the work coming out of Birmingham University, the GI for roadside air quality, and I can provide links to that information later on.
Super, thank you. Question from Melanie Lamb. What are the proposals for monitoring implementation? For example, will the opportunity mapping be updated as planting activity progresses to show how planting has aligned with the opportunity maps? From Wigan Council.
It's a very, very good question. So the monitoring is going to be undertaken, as I said earlier, that we'll be asking partners, local authorities and private sector partners, to inform us of numbers and locations of trees planted. And can those sites be removed from the map to show that they've been planted? They can, and I haven't. That wasn't something I thought of until you've read that. So thank you.
Super, thanks, Melanie. Okay, Amanda Bamford, you mentioned a lot about the benefits to communities, pollution, etc. But what about measuring benefits to urban biodiversity, especially in decisions on what to plant?
Decisions on what to plant would all be taken locally, so they'd be whether that be in conjunction with the local tree officer on local authority land, or with geoecology unit if appropriate, and so we would have to take advice from locally on species selection.
Super, thank you. Lee Dudley, though Lee's just left, so hopefully he can follow up on this. To try and buy UK sourced and grown species, he's made a comment there.
Yeah.
And Alice Kennedy, does all our trees take into account the tree and woodland strategies adopted by the individual local authorities within Greater Manchester?
It was produced in collaboration with the officers who would have been responsible for those strategies. So we hope it provides an umbrella that is in sync with each of those.
Super. And here from Kieran Doig, just to echo the calls for more consultation, I'm aware of various conversations ongoing looking to initiate a project on understanding contemporary public perceptions of urban trees. Anyone interested in helping fund or partner, please do get in touch with Kieran. So Kieran, just if you want to share the website is Forest Research, and people can get in touch with you there. Thanks, Kieran. From Paula Pearson, picking up on the risks of existing trees questions, is this available at a GIS layer to support consultation and planning?
Yes, it is. So Paula, I can talk to you about that later on.
Okay, question from Gary. As the natural climate habitat in the UK is woodland, natural climate's habitat in UK is woodland, will the strategy allow the natural regeneration of our woodlands as a technique as well as tree planting, particularly near our existing ecologically valuable ancient SSSIs, local wildlife sites, native broadleaf woodlands, for example?
It does allow for that, but we don't have a way of monitoring that at the landscape scale. So that would be down to site managers, particularly where we're talking about SSSIs and local nature reserves.
Super, thank you. And from Adele Warren, I welcome the mapping and data. I do think it could be built on with further partnership working regarding biodiversity and supporting wildlife. Is this planned for further development by partnering with other organisations? Thanks, Adele.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Super.
It is.
A couple more questions to go from Dave here, Dave Barlow. Hi, Dave. Can all our trees help identify city and district priorities?
We hope so. That's precisely what we've done it for. And I think, as I said earlier as well, the way to really get into the nuts and bolts of that is by combining the opportunity data we have with local priority data on, as I said, potentially looking at where there's going to be funding for regeneration, or where there are specific issues in a district that the local authority actors are aware of. And so we hope that that's exactly how this mapping would form the basis then for a more detailed local strategy going on.
Super. And the final question from Dave again. Many existing woodlands are not being managed in any shape or form. How will we ensure the sustainable long-term management of the 11.13 million trees already living in Greater Manchester? And is this a priority commitment of all our tree strategy?
It is. It is. How we do that by showing the evidence, by presenting the importance, and by trying to bring the community along with us and make it a partnership responsibility to managing those. Yeah, but that is absolutely a main priority of this document and our strategy as City of Trees.
Yeah, and obviously with our Citizen Forester programme, that's for us, that's our commitment to enabling and encouraging everyone else, residents, businesses within Greater Manchester to play their part and benefit from it themselves. That's all the questions.
Okay, so thank you everyone for sending questions in. We've only run a little bit over, so that's great. If you do have any further questions, you can email me, sarah@cityoftrees.org.uk, and we'll do our best to answer those and send them round. We're also going to download a transcript of these questions and type them up a little bit more so they're a bit more filled out, and we'll send that round as well as all the links to the documents. So thank you everyone for attending. Hope you found it interesting. The next step for all of us is to go away and read All Our Trees, very light bedtime reading at over 100 pages, really absorb that and
it's mostly pictures.
build that into your strategies, local plans, how it can work for your organisation, and then come back to us with any questions that you might have. We are here to help and advise. So thank you everyone for joining. If you've got any further comments, I can see people are leaving them in the chat. Any further questions, email me, sarah@cityoftrees.org.uk, and we'll be sharing a recording and all the links and the questions hopefully later today, if not tomorrow. So thank you for all attending and your time. We really appreciate it. So yeah, just follow up if you have anything. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Bye.